Welcome to Engagement Fundraising, where you'll learn how busy fundraisers like you are generating more major and planned gifts at lower costs. Brought to you by iMarketSmart.com, the software and services company that helps nonprofits raise more money more efficiently.
The things that we characterize as sudden and revolutionary have been happening for a long time, very slowly, but no one has noticed. They simply have looked the other way, wanted to pretend that everything was just fine, and it's only when these hard realities are visited on them that they respond and then declare them revolutionary and sudden.
Hi there, I'm Tim Chen, Marketing Solutionist at MarketSmart. On today's episode, we are joined by a very special guest, Jim Langley, President of Langley Innovations. Learn from the expert on taking a top-down approach, working with board members, maintaining and building trust with your donors, and much more. This is just the first part of this conversation. Stay tuned for the next episode for the rest. Not sure what engagement fundraising is? Well, you will soon.
Welcome to Engagement Fundraising. We're here today with both Greg Warner and a special guest today, Jim Langley of Langley Innovations. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Tim.
Hold on. This is a very special guest, and I'm unbelievably thrilled, by the way, Jim, to have you here, because it's hard for me to find completely like minds in the universe, and I feel like your mind and my mind are doing like a Vulcan mind meld. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Greg. I feel the same way. I think we're converging on the same issues and see both the same challenges and opportunities ahead. And I think both of us feel it's incredibly important to get these messages out to affect practice that in some cases is going in the wrong direction and will drag down otherwise worthy nonprofits and educational institutions.
Without a doubt. And this is why I'm so thrilled, because I'm coming at all this from a different angle. I'm coming from the donor. I mean, you, of course, are coming from the donor perspective too, but also from having worked in the sector for many years. So in fact, with that, Tim, you wanted to find out, who is this guy?
Yeah, so for those that don't know Jim, you can find out more about him through our consultancy podcast. You're going to be on a future episode of that coming out pretty soon here. But for those that haven't listened to that, can you kind of give us some background on where your fundraising history and what your involvement is with the sector?
Sure. I spent 30 years in higher education, 21 as a vice president, and ran the advancement operations at Georgetown University, University of California, San Diego, and Georgia Tech. And then after I stepped away from higher education, I created my own consulting and training firm, Langley Innovations. And there's a lot of firms out there, but what we really try to focus on is not the pure tactics and techniques of fundraising, but creating the conditions that will allow fundraising to be viable over many, many years. And what we see are too many people focusing on the latter at the expense of the former. In other words, being so heavily tactical and in some ways outmodedly so that they're really starting to undercut their long-term potential and base for support. So we see that, and our firm is really dedicated to helping them understand where philanthropy is going and to make sure that they maintain the relevance of their institution by respecting these powerful philanthropic trends and attitudes.
Wonderful.
Would you say that's a top-down approach? Is that the idea?
It is, and it is so much, Greg, that these are lessons that have to be ingested and understood by boards, by presidents, by CEOs. The delegation of all things advancement and fundraising to vice presidents to treat it as if it were a handoff operation and not a reputation building and a relevance maintaining function is part of the reason that so many organizations are underperforming.
So let me jump in here because I got questions. For Jim. I could talk to Jim all day and all night if you'll have me. Can you cook? You know? So I've been in the boardroom. I was on a board. I got out of it. It was weird. things are very strange when people become board members or people take leadership positions. I've seen leaders of organizations who have no business running anything. Maybe they were a general or something in the army, and then they get this like parachute position that's wonderful, and they get to run this charitable organization. They don't know what they're doing, or they don't know about fundraising. And then you got board members who are on the board, and I've been in these board meetings where I swear I could feel the board members eyeing each other and figuring out who's going to one up or who's in control or power and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, this has nothing to do with the mission or philanthropy or being charitable or being a good human being. This has everything to do with everything else. I just wonder, is it just me?
No, and the evidence would suggest that you're right, Greg, that as we look at the fate and fortune of so many nonprofits, many are short-lived, many underperform, many have turnover of leadership, of board members, of staff. So this is all symptomatic, I think, of the conditions that you're describing. And we could certainly talk about who should be getting into the business of nonprofit leadership. If you're a control freak, you don't belong at the top. It's not what the business is about. You're about building communities of support. And this philanthropic revolution that really set North America apart from all other cultures began with we, the people, trying to create more perfect schools, communities, churches, roads, fire departments. It was essentially democratic, and it culminated in a shared generosity toward shared ends. At its worst, we see nonprofit leaders who are so controlling, it's to the point where they just want the money and want no voice, no feedback, don't want to think about market, and will often justify what they do by saying they represent a good cause. So they quickly lead their organization out of touch. They cocoon it from realities. They subordinate it to their ego, and the cause itself is damaged in the process. So we really have to find ways of helping prospective nonprofit leaders understand what this business is about is coalitions of shared purpose, then reinforced by the impact that the organization has. Will retain donors when we show them that their investment is producing a societal return. But for a number of reasons that we can talk about, including a generation of baby boomers that was largely well-heeled, largely loyal, and largely a product of a time that saw a healthy economy, a lot of bad habits were developed with the assumption that those trends and patterns would continue forever. And they are not. They're changing rapidly. And there's a great lag between the performance and leadership of those nonprofits and the realities that are and will be visited on them.
Learn about a free resource to help you write letters to major donors in this quick break. This week I want to encourage everyone to download a new resource from us here at MarketSmart. The Ultimate Guide to Writing Major Donor Letters is now out and available at imarketsmart.com/majorletters. That's www.imarketsmart.com/majorletters. In this resource, you'll learn how to write appeal letters to major donors that actually raise money. Our new guide will help you every step of the way, from qualification to stewardship and everything in between. Find out the 4 types of letters you should be sending your major donors, what you need to know before you begin writing, how to design your letter to be scanned before it's read, how to craft compelling call to action, how to adopt a you mindset and make the donor feel like a hero, and much more. Get your copy for free by going to imarketsmart.com/majorletters. That's www.imarketsmart.com/majorletters. With that, let's get back to the conversation with Greg and Jim.
So, Jim, here's an amazing thing that I see happening is that the startup sector, if you will, it used to be called just entrepreneurship, but now everybody likes to call themselves a startup, whatever. The culture, and if anyone's ever been to my website, my careers page, and learned about how I built this company, maybe even go look at my Glassdoor, to be a CEO of an emerging company now, not a nonprofit that's been around for 50 or 100 years, but to be a CEO of a private but very publicly seen and emerging company, you have to be open, honest, transparent. I wear my heart on my sleeve on my blog. I tell people exactly how I feel. I let them communicate to me on Twitter or LinkedIn or even by email. I answer my own phone. I want to be in touch with our customers. I want to hear the vibe, all this kind of stuff. And I think that, firstly, I can't believe that this quote unquote like revolution of how business should be done, how employees should be treated, how constituents should be cared for. I can't believe it really hasn't like hit like a bomb, like hit the nonprofit sector. And then this weekend, I see, as an example, two humongous things happen. Number one, the Humane Society of America, apparently their CEO resigns after the board had a meeting about whatever indiscretions were happening. It was another Harvey Weinstein kind of moment. But then the board voted to keep him on, so 7 board members resigned immediately, and then finally the CEO himself resigned. Now, interestingly, the next day after I saw that happen, right before the Super Bowl on NBC, there was an ad for animal shelters. And I can't even remember what the nonprofit was called, but the ad was a direct hit at the Humane Society. I've never seen anything like this competitive-wise. It said, don't give to the Humane Society. They overpay their CEO. They this, they that, they this, they that. Give to your local animal shelter. I'm thinking, but the local Humane Society is like individually run. I don't think that they actually get any money from the national, and on about that. So I'm just saying this is going to be exploded by forces in our society because nobody trusts anybody. Nobody trusts the news anymore, and nobody else trusts their nonprofit. So sorry for this long rant, but there's a freight train coming that's going to whack everything. What do you think?
That's right, Greg. My favorite quote comes from John Kenneth Galbraith, who said, revolutions kick down already rotted doors. So the things that we characterize as sudden and revolutionary have been happening for a long time, very slowly, but no one has noticed. They simply have looked the other way, wanted to pretend that everything was just fine. And it's only when these hard realities are visited on them that they respond and then declare them revolutionary and sudden. So we see this rot occurring in any number of places, and it goes back to exactly what you pointed to, is an organization removed from its marketplace, of creating a headquarters, of getting information filtered and at the board level spoon-fed to them, and then wondering why the world doesn't comport with their sense of the way it should be. Well, the world as it is always wins the day, not the world as we would want it to be. So it behooves organizations to be constantly listening. So you take your approach and your attitude, which you characterize as a startup attitude, but it is practical and smart because this market changes so quickly, it segments so fast, it adapts to new practices so quickly that if you step outside of it for very long, it will pass you by, or competitors will take away a significant portion of your market. So your attitude of listening to your staff, listening to anybody who you can talk to, and pulsing the market through every means available to you is a smart and practical way of keeping up with these new realities. The set of circumstances you just described is an organization that had created its own reality. And in the face of this Me Too movement, to have renewed this gentleman's appointment would be to have lost a tremendous amount of female support, which in the philanthropic world is absolutely deadly. I don't have the demographics of the Humane Society in front of me, but I would suspect they enjoy a very healthy quotient of female support, and maybe even the majority. And since women live longer and dispose of more income than men, they were clearly biting off the nose to spite their face. And it took a revolution from some board members for them to adjust to those glaring realities. Just astonishing.
And major gifts are often done as a unit, husband and wife making those decisions, right, Jim?
That's right. And let's be clear that there are a lot of men in sympathy with the Me Too moment. One of the things that worries me is that there are still gentlemen, there are still men that are true to their word and faithful to their mates, and they're just as appalled as women are by what we're learning from these dogs running organizations.
Yeah, many of us have daughters like me. Many of us have moms and aunts and cousins. And yeah, no, we're pissed.
Yeah.
But I love this rotting door thing. It's funny because when we met a while back and we were having coffee and talking about this, and you said to me, Greg, you punch holes in rotting doors. The image I conjured in my mind was that, doors can look pretty good if they have a decent coat of paint on them.
Yeah.
But beneath that, it's rotten.
Exactly.
That's what's kind of happening. It's really scary. They need an entrepreneurial mindset, and quick.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Engage in Fundraising. If you like the show, make sure to review it in iTunes and pass it along to a friend or colleague. If you're curious about what we do, make sure to check out iMarketSmart.com and to download the ultimate guide to writing major donor letters found at www.iMarketSmart.com/major-letters. You can find more information about Jim Langley over at LangleyInnovations.com and connect with him on LinkedIn. Thanks again to Jim for taking the time out of his schedule to join us on the podcast. Thanks for listening to Engagement Fundraising.